clothes?
Their age, where they speak.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungry@America.org. Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
WWGB, Philadelphia, the talk station.
Good afternoon, greater Philadelphia area. This is Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM. I'm Tom Toole. She's Sarah Time, and he's Keith Lombardi. We all work at the Tom Toole Sales Group at RE/MAX Mainline, the #1 RE/MAX team in Pennsylvania since 2018. And we're going to be talking about a lot today on the show. Lastly, we're going to be getting to Keith, talk about what got him into real estate, what keeps him in real estate. He's beaten the 87% failure rate of those folks that are out of the business in the first 5 years. We've also got news from the DOJ and NAR seeking a rehearing on their investigation ruling and the implications around contract law. But first, we've got some big news coming out of the VA and the NAR settlement. We're going to start with that, and if you like what you hear, you get some value out of this, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, and if you want to schedule a call with our team, whether it's Sarah or Keith, you can do that with a link in the comments. So, we know that after the NAR settlement, one of the biggest things I've heard is, what are veterans going to do? Are they going to be able to, well, they're not allowed to pay people. There's been a long-standing rule with VA loans for the Department of Veteran Affairs that there could be no buyer real estate agent compensation on the settlement sheet. And we had some breaking news last week. I look at this as probably the best piece of news coming out of this commission lawsuit in a while, that Michelle Corden, the deputy policy director at the VA, announced at the Mortgage Bankers Association Secondary and Capital Markets Conference in New York that there's going to be a circular issued. I'm guessing like a shopping center circular. I thought this was interesting language here. They said this. It wasn't like a memo or news or anything like that, but a circular would be issued between now and June 12th, so in the next couple weeks here, and it's going to talk about what's going to happen in terms of the rule-making process with the VA. So right now, again, VA policy states that a veteran's allowed to use a buyer broker to purchase a home using their VA loan benefit, and they may not, under any circumstances, be charged a brokerage fee or commission in connection with the services of such individuals. So obviously, major problem with the commission lawsuit, and apparently this circular, and this is what the letter states, while the market's response to the settlement remains uncertain, one thing is clear: veteran borrowers will be significantly affected by this ruling. And as the VA has expressed previously, failure to act would put VA buyers at a significant disadvantage. I totally agree there, especially in today's tight inventory market. NAR had also advocated for the VA to change its rule, and now there's going to be details released between now and the 12th about how there's going to be a change in that rule, possibly a temporary fix, maybe a permanent fix. What do you two think about this?
So would that be that, like, if there was a change to the rule, would it be that veterans can pay?
So they don't know. That's the point. They're just saying, hey, there's something coming. And
Right.
But I mean, I would imagine that's what it would be. What else could there be?
Right. I mean, as a veteran, I don't know how I would feel about. I mean, you want to be able to compete, and if you're out in the in the market and you need to buy a home, you want to be able, I'm guessing, to have the option of paying that. But at the
Right.
same time, that's one of the benefits that they and protections that they have because they're veterans. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because, yeah, you want to be able to use, that benefit of being a veteran, and obviously I feel like we do owe them that, but it's going to be tough to say one way or another until we find out what exactly is going on. I mean, obviously, they're still going to be in a position where a buyer may potentially have to take on that expense anyway. I do think that it would be great that they actually took the time to try and give them maybe a little bit of a leg up. I mean, these are people that we owe our deepest, debt of gratitude to. So it definitely will be interesting. I do think it's going to be up to us as agents to obviously help them get through whatever the situation may be. There's other ways around it, but it is good to see that they're making that effort to try and, give them a little bit of a leg up.
Well, I think, Sarah, you hit the nail on the head here, right? We don't know what this change is going to be. It could be an increased loan-to-value ratio where they can finance the buyer agent commission. It could be the allowance of because remember, the VA is also a financing agency, so it's they have the ability to make rules that are going to apply specifically to that type of loan. Now,
Right.
it's not a huge percentage, but we do a handful of these every year. So it could be a rise in loan, because right now you can get up to like 106 or 107% on a VA loan. So that could go higher. It could be they can just pay out of pocket, because a lot of VA buyers, they use the whole benefit, but they also have cash on hand too. So it's not like they're totally cash poor here. So that could be another benefit of this. I think it's about time somebody said something about this in the financing world. And these folks, VA, I mean, they're as affected by anybody. I would love FHA to come out and say something, because I think those people with limited cash, they don't often have enough money to even get into the house without some
Right.
seller concessions. So, do you think this is the first of many changes we're going to see? Do you think that other, financing agencies and mortgage laws are going to be rewritten? What is this? Is this setting the stage for something more with this commission lawsuit?
Maybe, but like honestly, August 17th, is that the date
Yes.
that is like has been set? That will be here very soon.
Right, we're a
So
bit close to not have any more information at
right,
this
and
point.
it takes, I feel like, a lot of these different changes quite a bit of time to go through. So they better get that circular out pretty quick.
Right.
Well, the circular's coming in 2 weeks. I mean,
Okay.
it said June 12th. Today's what, the 28th, 29th? So we'll see that in a couple weeks. I would imagine they made that at the announcement because it was at that like MBA conference, so it was a good time to do it.
Yeah.
It's a step in the right direction, but who knows what this is going to say. I'm glad to see that they're doing something. My hope is that FHA is going to follow suit. My hope is that that the other, the lawmakers are going to allow for inflated sellers assists or larger sellers assist in some cases, because if they don't do that, there's going to continue to be a challenge here. Competitiveness is the big problem, and then the seller ultimately is going to pick the offer they want to work with anyway.
Well, I think, and we've heard kind of rumblings and grumblings a little bit anyway about they're potentially going to increase the amount of sellers assist and then make it specifically so that a portion of it's going to be just towards financing the commission. But it's all hearsay. I mean, obviously we're doing the best we can to try and prepare for this ahead of time. But it's, what can we really do other than when it does happen, we'll just be forced to kind of to make those changes. And obviously in a competitive market, we don't want to have to completely refigure out how we're doing things.
Yes.
So the more information, the sooner the possible, but obviously we'll just have to deal with it as it comes.
Yeah, I agree there.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, I guess, like, if nothing else in the interim, until they figure out maybe a more permanent solution, like at least having the option to be
Right.
able to pay if there is a home that comes up where there is no buyer agency commission being paid out, like, that would be very unfortunate if that was the right home for somebody that is using the VA, that they're just out of luck, so I guess at least give them the option to do that until things get.
And probably more often than you think that's probably going to happen. I mean, the amount of veterans, and like, we don't see it that often, but I think often enough that's going to potentially be rough for quite a few veterans. And then obviously on the FHA as well, like there's ways to work around that, but if we don't know, automatically it puts people out of the running. So it's kind of a shame,
Right. Well, and I feel as though in a lot of situations, they're already at a little bit of a disadvantage, because when you look at acceptable financing options, very frequently the ones that are checked are cash and conventional.
Right,
Like they're
right.
not even, now you can still try to submit a different offer,
Yeah.
but oftentimes they're already you'd have to fight for them pretty hard from the get-go just to even have their offer like reviewed,
Right.
if it's not the financing type that they
Well,
put
especially
out
if
there.
it's FHA and someone is willing to maybe take on the responsibility of repairs, but then they're on the other end of it where they may have to potentially cover a commission, and I mean, then you're really at a disadvantage there. So it would be nice to definitely hear a little bit something more permanent from the financing end, that yes, we are definitely going to have this option, other than what we have already discussed as agents. But then again, until they actually physically come out and announce what the formal change is going to be, or we get this
The
circular.
Maybe $5.99 chicken cutlets
Yeah.
in Acme here. It'll be interesting. I don't see how the financing industry is going to be able to move ahead without some changes, because they're under the gun as much as anybody else. And the reality is, if a couple banks come out and are a little more flexible, you know what's going to happen? More agents will use those banks because
Right.
they have more options. So I don't see how the financing industry can't do this. It's a good step here, because the VA buyers were the ones that were immediately, because of this rule, they were the biggest disadvantage right now. Now, hopefully, this will open the floodgates here because this would be a step in the right direction for folks who just simply can't afford it. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, and that this is the side of the commission lawsuit no one ever talks about. So good news there. Moving on, we also saw some other good news last week, and this again is this came out over the weekend here. We saw massive inventory growth week over week nationally. 16,532 new homes came to the market. We did not have this type of positive growth last year at all, ever. And I'm a big proponent of inventory. Where you're looking at, we saw inventory jump up to almost 600,000 homes. This is the peak for 2024 across the country. And we're still about half of where we were in 2015, to give some perspective. The same week last year in 2015, we had 1,130,873 active listings on the market. So we're certainly trending in the right direction. And if you look at these charts here, and Sarah, I know we talked about this last week, right now we're at 37% more than where we were last year in terms of new homes and active listings that have come to the market. Obviously, this gets very local. We can talk about what's going on county by county, state by state. I'm excited about this for a lot of people, and rates have kind of settled in a little bit. I mean, nationally, they're coming in above 7. I think today, what was the quote that we got here? I saw 6.75% at the end of last week. We just got the rate quote here. Let me look at this. And I want to get your reaction on how we're spreading the word, because this is what people have been kind of waiting for. You know, how many times, Keith or Sarah, have you guys heard like, hey, I'm waiting for more housing options?
Constantly.
Yeah, all the time.
It's been the number one topic for the last couple of years, and it's one of those things where a lot of people who I feel like have been also kind of scared of the rate situation, or finally have just gotten to a point where they realize that they continue to wait, eventually they're going to wait for something that just may never come. So they finally are, it's nice to be able to finally tell people, listen, there's significantly more inventory. The rates are starting to flatten out a little bit. Let's kind of revisit what your goals are. And it's been nice to actually open up, the MLS every day and see new coming soon listings almost every day. So.
Yeah.
Well, I think people get beaten down by that, right? I mean, you look at the same 5 houses, or there's one home that fits your price, range. It becomes challenging. So rates today are at 6.75%. Best case scenario locally on a 30-year conventional. 6.5 on FHA, 6.625% on jumbo, and PHFA, which is a specific loan for the state of Pennsylvania, 5.5%.
Wow.
So I mean that might be an opportunity if you meet the qualifications there. So is this going to continue here? Is this a spring phenomenon? Are we going to see this through the summer? I mean, we've got we're kind of at that funny part of the year where the clock's ticking on. When we know the market's going to slow down a little bit seasonally, especially coming off the Memorial Day weekend. What do you two predict?
I think we're going to see it continue to go up here, at least through June. I know we always talk about July 4th kind of being a pivotal weekend in the market,
right,
particularly when we are in, a more normal seasonal type of market. July 4th tends to be that like cutoff point, but just for listings that I know of that are going to be coming up, which obviously does not represent all of the market,
right,
but
right.
I think that June will still be a very active month in terms of stuff coming out.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of years ago, I would have probably been able to tell you with a certain amount of certainty that what I knew was going to happen. It's been kind of a roller coaster ride the last few years ever since COVID. But I mean, I think there's a lot of people out there that are looking, they're very aggressive. They want to be in homes. I think that we're probably going to continue to be busy into maybe the middle of the summer. And then we will have that natural lull period where people take vacations, they go away. And then normally by mid-September, we're back up and running with the fall. People are kind of settled back into their normal routines. Kids are in school. But hopefully we continue to get those more listings. Obviously, it's more opportunities for us to help our clients. So
yeah,
I'm here. I'm for it. Let's go.
Well, I also think there's always some element of clients that are like, oh, I'm going to list in the spring, and then time moves very quickly.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, but no, I've got this that week and this that week,
Right.
and I still need to do these couple last minute things, and very quickly going from, all right, I'm going to list in mid-May turns into mid to end of June, just
Right.
because life happens, and that's when you're able to get it together and get it up.
Well, that demonstrates a couple key things here. I want to go over some stats locally because I was giving you some national numbers. So where we were in the bright MLS compared to a year ago, we saw this the week ending May 19th. We saw 6,380 new homes come to the market. Active listings are up 16.7%. So that's a big jump. And I think the Northeast has been the last to the party with inventory. I mean, Florida, the Sun Belt states, Carolinas, we've talked about that. So that's certainly in line with what we're seeing here. And to your point, Sarah, I think that's where, as agents, if you're not like following up with people, like there's such missed opportunities there, because things happen and then they just see a house. They don't even think about you, right? They're like, oh, so I know Keith's been helping me, but we really got to see this house.
Right.
And it's not even anything malicious. It's, you've got to be in touch with these people if they got any sort of intent or motivation, because if you're not, that's where, it's like, oh, their house went on the market, and they see that, and it happens to everybody. It's happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to you guys. There's no way to safeguard against it except by just being very diligent in when someone says they want to do something, and you almost feel like uncomfortable following up with them so much. Have you ever felt that way?
Mm-hmm.
You kind of have to, though. You almost have to kind of annoy them into, but it comes from a place of
Politely
help.
persistent
There you
is
go,
what I
like
would say.
that.
Same idea.
No, I mean, it's the truth. I actually am dealing with that with a client right now who kind of, it was not in her timing wise, it wasn't the best time, but then things kind of all of a sudden moved up very quickly. So now she's trying to take advantage of the market while it's still up. We originally were thinking of maybe doing it in the fall, but now all of a sudden it's become realistic to get it done at the end of the spring market.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of just, you do what you can to make it work,
Yeah.
Well, and that's it. Life always goes faster than you think. I mean, you're even talking about like the fall. Someone says they're moving in the fall. I guarantee you they're purchasing over the summer. I mean, it happens once someone makes a decision,
right?
They're not going to wait. So I do see this as a positive thing for real estate agents. There's one last piece of news I want to hit on here before we take a quick break, because this was a little concerning to me. That Lance Lambert, who runs the ResiClubAnalytics.com, former Fortune.com housing analyst. So he put out something here that apparently he was on. We talked about all the equity homeowners have right now. There's $32 trillion in home equity, which while outstanding home equity loans only amount to $400 billion, so there's a big delta there. And there's Wall Street analysts out there saying as early as this summer, a proposed move by Freddie Mac could begin to unleash almost $1 trillion into consumers' wallets. By autumn, it could be on its way to $2 trillion. And he was on Fox Business, and the journalist there, Charles Payne, asked him about the Freddie Mac proposal on his show, and basically tapping into home equity, which I think is a dangerous thing to be doing because we know what happened before. Basically the short of it was that they were expecting like another economic stimulus coming from this equity here. How do you feel about this? I was a little alarmed to hear that people are even talking about that right now, given the affordability concerns that are happening. And I mean, we've talked about like how credit card usage is up. Mm-hmm. I think this is a bad thing for consumers to be doing. I'd just be looking at, hey, what you can afford is what you should be looking at. But that's just me.
Wait, they're saying for people that have, enough equity built in their home that they could tap into that without increasing their without change.
Oh no, they're talking about home equity lines, like taking out home equity lines on these properties.
Equity.
Yes.
And that would just be because you're tight on funds. So hey, we're gonna make it
the
easier.
Money's available, right?
The money's available. We're gonna make it easier for you to pull from.
Yes. That's the short of it here. Yes.
Yeah, that's terrible. I mean, it's great to have that option if you have a realistic need for it. Mm-hmm. If you have, God forbid, some unforeseen issue, some major repair, that's great. If you want to do some kind of repairs to the home that are going to gain you even more positive equity, that's great. But if you just want to tap into it because you can, and especially with the credit card debt, what it already is, and the volatility rate with that, I think we're just opening up the floodgates for something terrible. So I think people need to be very careful about that unless it's truly needed for something that's realistic.
Right, and because I think it would be very easy to, without even realizing it, if you just have that line open, mm-hmm. to eat into it, right. Without even just this month things are which I completely understand.
Next thing you know, you've run up most of your equity, especially if you're able to pull up to 80% of it.
Yeah.
Considering how much equity has gone up, I mean, that's a lot of money, which can get away from you very quickly.
Right. So I feel like that is a slippery slope.
Yeah, I mean, some people are going to do it. I mean, that happens. I think that it's not a stimulus view. I just it's a way for people to not have to refinance. They and they don't lose their ultra low mortgage rates. So I mean, if there's a need to do that, sure. And I guess in their view, they're seeing this as preferable to taking out a higher interest credit card debt, which is rising and delinquencies have risen, which I know we've talked about. I think that's a bad idea. I was shocked to see people even talking about that, but that's where folks' heads go sometimes. So
and I think that's why it's careful that it's very individualistic. It may what works for one may not work for another, and that's why I think something that comes out like this, where it highlights that yes, equity has gone up, and you could potentially pull that kind of, it's not false advertising, but it sends the wrong message. So I think, you have to do your own due diligence to be careful of what you're going to take out, what you're going to use it for, and the implications if you don't, So it just comes back to working with someone on the lending side that you absolutely trust, and it's going to explain the possible risks, and, just do your own due diligence before you make a rash decision.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I guess the flip side of this, and I can see both sides, is that before we saw this crash, people were getting out they would get an 80% loan, and then they get another 20% loan. It'd be like a piggyback loan, so they were already financing it anyway. So I'm not really sure what to make of this. This is where I'm so clear that consumers really just need to sit down and have a meeting with somebody, whether it's their financial advisor, an accountant, their real estate agent, all three, whomever, just to make sure you're not making a bad decision that could cost you a lot of money. Because when you start hearing this stuff on the news, and they're and this isn't, I shouldn't say the news. These are analysts on Wall Street that are praising this proposal in publications like the Financial Times and other places. People are going to start to read it, and it's going to catch on. So, as we head into this kind of rising inventory market, I want to get just a quick take from both of you here. What advice do you have for people looking to transact in the next 6 to 18 months? Because I'm clear inventory is going to keep on this slow trend, at least for a little bit. Rates have clearly stabilized. What are you telling people that want to buy, sell, or both in the next 6 to 18 months? What's your advice for them?
I mean, honestly, my advice is to get out there, see the properties, and be ready to make serious offers, because this is more inventory than what we have had in the past. For sellers, we don't have a crystal ball. There are still more buyers than there are sellers right now, so it would still be a good time to list. But again, you want to be ahead of the curve. If the market does shift at some point, you want to be on the side of being able to tap into that equity. Hope you didn't pull it all out already.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Don't follow this advice here.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I agree. Biggest thing I've been telling people is that if you are going to do it, know what your numbers are, not only what your buying power is, but what your most comfortable monthly payment is. Have a plan in place, know what is working to get offers accepted, and you're better off dealing with what may be a less than ideal interest rate now and refinancing it later. I do think that the rates are going to stay where they are, maybe will continue to dip. I do think they probably will begin to drop a little bit more at the end of the year as we go into 2025, and then everyone who also has been waiting is going to again clearing off the benches. And then it's going to be not only maybe 5 people interested in the same home, it's going to be 15. And we're going to be back where we were when we came out of COVID. So, just do your due diligence. If you can find something now that you may have to deal with a less than ideal payment for 9 months to a year before you refi, it can still be done. Obviously, it's important to work with someone who understands the market, specifically where you're looking at, and a good lender. So it can be done. If you're willing to do it and do what's necessary, get out there and do it.
Yeah, and you talked about numbers, Keith. I love that because that makes it really clear. There's 3 numbers, 2 for buyers, 1 for a seller. How much are you walking away with? What is your net number? That is the most important number as a seller. For buyers, it's your monthly payment, like you said, and how much cash do you need to close?
Right.
Like that's really the stuff you want to understand more than anything else. And if your agent can't break that down for you, it's probably time to find a new one. And because that's how you make decisions in today's market. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about this DOJ opinion that's out there, how NAR is seeking a rehearing next on Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM.
Shouldn't have to sacrifice great service just to get a great rate. At Mortgage America, we've been lending with this philosophy for over 35 years. We
We have access to great low rates without the complications and delays of big or online banks. We're a local Pennsylvania lender with loan
DOJ
officers that
stuff
you
is
can
crazy.
actually meet. As PHFA's #1
I
lender,
know,
we
they
specialize
just-
in all residential mortgages.
Well, they're basically saying we don't have to honor our contracts.
Let it go. Like they're like beating a dead horse at this point. I feel like this is going to be what's going on for the foreseeable future. The next few years, it's going to different things are going to be brought up, and then they're going to do this and that. And
For the
just,
best local
I think
mortgage
the
service and
problem,
great
though,
rates
is if you
on
think
your
about what it
money,
does for like
look
business,
no
if you can just
further
back
than
out of
Mortgage
contracts
America.
every time you
We've
want.
been operating in the greater Philadelphia area for 40 years with a focus on smooth, easy access to home purchasing. Whether you're a first-time buyer, upsizing or downsizing, or just refinancing, we have programs for you. We also have closing cost assistance programs and access to subsidized interest rates. Pre-approval is free, no costs or commitments. To learn more, visit our website at mymortgageamerica.com or give us a call at 610-439-8000. We always have a person available to take your call with around-the-clock human service. Purchase your home with the personalized, local service you find at Mortgage America.
Mortgage America's equal housing lender, NMLS 128501.
The Tom Toole Sales Group is the #1 REMAX team in Pennsylvania with over $165 million in volume for 2021. I'm Tom Toole, and our team has achieved that kind of success by being a great place to work with and to work for. No one knows Greater Philly better than we do. We don't. 1 minute. More importantly, we're real people. We hire the best agents and we give them all the tools to succeed. Even our brand new agents sell 17 to 24 homes a year because our team delivers the best experience in real estate. Teams deliver a better experience than individuals, and we're a top 1% real estate team in the country. We call it AAA service. We're your advocate, ally, and advisor. Because this isn't a transaction to us, it's a relationship. If you're buying or selling a home, call the Tom Toole Sales Group at 30 seconds. Line at 610-692-6976 or visit tomtoole.com. That's Tom, Toole with an E.com. Sell your home for more, and remember the real estate golden rule. You always get more when you work with Tom Toole. Have you considered a career in real estate? Do you want control? 10 seconds. No. Whether you have a license or not, call us today at 610-692-6976 or visit tomtoole.com. Join our team, the Tom Toole Sales Group at REMAX Main Line.
Welcome back to Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM. I'm Tom Toole, she's Sarah Timon, he's Keith Lombardi. We all work at the Tom Toole Sales Group at REMAX Main Line, the #1 REMAX team in Pennsylvania since 2018, and we are going to be talking about the NAR request for a rehearing in the DOJ NAR settlement that is now back on the table. We're going to be talking about how Keith has beaten the odds in real estate, what makes him a successful agent here in the next segment. And if you get some value out of this, you'll like what you hear, make sure to hit subscribe on the channel, click on the bell for notifications, and if you want to schedule a call with our team, Keith or Sarah specifically, make sure to do that with the link in the comments. So I wanted to talk about this DOJ opinion. This was filed on Monday of last week, and we didn't really get into it too much on the show. So the NAR, they filed a petition with the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District Court of the Columbia Circuit. And the goal of the petition is a rehearing of the court's 3-judge panel decision, allowing the DOJ to reopen its investigation into the trade association. The NAR petition said the divided panel's decision in the significant government contract interpretation case goes where no court has gone before and directly conflicts with precedents of this court and the Supreme Court, and will reshape the landscape for all who find themselves on the other side of the bargaining table with the government. So the short of this here is that there was a settlement reached, it was signed, it was done, right? The settlement required NAR to improve transparency. The DOJ sent a letter to NAR in November of 2020 agreeing to close its investigation after agreeing to a settlement. And then with a new president in office, the DOJ withdrew the settlement, arguing that the settlement terms put undue restrictions on regulators, preventing their investigation of rules they deem harmful to consumers. The thought behind this petition, I want to get your reaction here, is that they're saying that it conflicts with at least 3 strains of circuit court and Supreme Court precedent, and that the government should be held to the terms of its contracts. Here's the quote. "It is a bedrock principle that the government must honor its word in those contracts, no matter who occupies the White House or leads the antitrust division. If the DOJ position adopted by the dividend panel is ultimately accepted, businesses and private citizens will be exposed to perpetual uncertainties regardless of the commitments or representations made by the government in settling investigations. I thought that was pretty aggressive language here by NAR in a good way. What do you two think about this?
I think it's just a little bit concerning where they're trying to basically, and I'm not an attorney obviously, but this is legal precedent. How can you just ignore what has set the standard when it comes to this type of thing? So I think it's a little bit scary, because then it makes you wonder how far down the road does this go. Like, obviously this is pretty major between the Department of Justice and NAR, but who's to say that it couldn't affect small businesses down the line, and then all of a sudden legal precedent becomes open to interpretation, and then it can get ugly. So should be interesting to see what happens with this.
So, right, so they just withdrew what they initiated. That's correct?
They're saying they changed their mind and they don't want to agree to the settlement.
After agreeing
After
to.
they
agreeing
it was
to it.
signed, it was done. Imagine.
I don't think you can just go back and say, never mind, I changed my mind. That's not how it works. That was the whole point of
Right.
having the whole.
Imagine.
This has never happened before, by the way.
Right.
Like,
Right.
this is not something that's happened. So I think that's, your reaction here says it all.
Yeah.
And
I don't think you're allowed to just be like, oh, never mind, I changed my mind.
Right. I mean, think about it in simpler terms, like with one of our clients.
Yeah.
You don't just get to just all of a sudden just ignore a legal contract.
Right.
well, I think that's the challenge here, is that people now just think they can get out of these contracts. So like, hey, I'm terminating the agreement, right? How many times have you heard that? And you're like, okay, well, tell me more about that. What's your game
Right.
plan here? And they're like, and it's, this is an affront on business and forget real estate for a second. If the DOJ is allowed to basically change their mind after they signed off, it's all done, what are we going to do in business, right? I mean, what's going to, like, you buy a house, so the seller wants it back, like they can just go back and take it from you, right? Like, you buy a car and you want to return, you get in a wreck and you're like, oh, this car wasn't safe enough, I'm returning it. Like,
Right.
and there's a lot of ramifications here if this gets agreed to, and I'm surprised. I think this could go to the Supreme Court. I mean, I think that's going to how far this might go, because it would challenge every piece of business that we've all done. I mean, we deal with contracts all the time. This is a problem, right?
Well, and if they're saying it's because it was a new president in office, so that's,
I think
Blah,
that's alleged. Like,
That's
they're just
alleged.
saying that was the reason why they opened it
Because
up.
I
No one
think-
ever came out and said that.
because we talk a lot about certainty and uncertainty in the market, and that when there's uncertainty, it's a lot more difficult to, move forward making these large financial decisions, right? So that would add a whole nother element to uncertainty if things can just be swapped around at different times. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just because oh, I don't like that anymore.
Well, because it's big and it's small. Like, just imagine, like you said, like all of a sudden you decide, I don't like this car anymore. And then it can get almost crazy with the amount of things that someone can just think, well, if they can do it on that level, then I can do it with this. And then it becomes almost like complete anarchy. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
where does the line stop?
Right.
And it's, unfortunately, I do think it's a little bit of overreach when it becomes, because they are the government, but then again, that's my personal opinion. I think that definitely, they need to look into that and hopefully, settle that down and figure that out. So I actually agree, Tom. I think that's going to wind up having to go to the Supreme Court.
And so this was already, just to give you guys a time frame here. So November 2020, the settlement was agreed to. Then July 2021, the DOJ withdrew. September 2021, NAR filed a petition to either set aside or modify the DOJ probes. January of 2023, there was, this is where it gets very muddy. Judge Timothy Kelly of the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia ruled in favor of NAR, reasserting the earlier settlements. Then DOJ appealed the ruling in March of 2023. Then in December of 2023, a 3-judge panel heard arguments from DOJ and NAR. And then in April of this year, the panel ruled 2-1 in favor of the DOJ and allowing it to continue its investigation. So obviously this is this is going back and forth here. I don't see how you can make it precedent that you can back out of a written agreement. Like, it's forget, again, this isn't about real estate, this is about contract law.
Right. I agree.
I mean, imagine, we're all 1099, so it's a lot different, but imagine like you get a job, right? And someone's like, hey, Sarah, we're going to pay you X amount of money. hey, we changed our mind. We're paying you less, and
Yeah.
then but you have to honor your end of the contract. Like I
Right.
mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And that stuff does happen when people get fired and all that, but it's not like you're stuck with it. And I think the problem here is that it's the government.
Right.
It's not like I mean, people do things wrong all the time, but they're setting a precedent that contracts don't mean anything, which concerns me on many levels.
Right, because it's the governing body that we all look to, and now they're just like, well, and it's like, what do you mean? Like, so, and then there was already a settlement in place. Everyone had agreed to the terms.
They already started enacting the terms.
Right.
Like NAR went way ahead of the game here and started doing things and moved ahead and so I mean that's the problem here.
Right. So to what end? Like everyone had kind of already made peace with it. We were preparing for it. So yeah, it's twofold with real estate specifically, and then with potentially setting a legal precedent that legally binding contracts no longer matter. That's a little bit concerning.
I hope NAR wins this one. I mean, I'm not one to usually be like very clear on the opinions, but this would go a long way here. I mean, it's just and NAR had to file a rehearing because I mean it's they really had no option here. I thought it was well written. I'm glad they did it. I mean, NAR, they finally got something right here as far as I can tell. So we'll see what happens. I mean, this is something that I think a lot of people are going to be paying attention to. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about Keith Lombardi, killer team member. Grateful to have him here next on Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM.
Just to get a great rate. At Mortgage America, we've been lending with this philosophy for over 35 years. We have access to great low rates without the
Making it okay
complications
over there?
and delays of big
Yeah,
loans.
no.
We're a local
I just,
Pennsylvania
no, it's just like a
lender with loan
scheduling
officers that
thing.
you can actually
Like, how about
meet.
this guy?
SPHF
Oh, that's the worst.
specialize in all residential mortgage programs, including first-time buyer programs and low down payment options. For your free pre-approval, call
That's
us at
Maddie yesterday.
610-439-8000.
She called me and she's like, I gotta go all the way out to Lancaster. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like,
I'm Tom Toole of the
You're
Tom Toole Sales
crazy.
Group at
Like,
Remax
she had like a
Main
car
Line.
problem.
If
She
you're
called me
thinking
when I
of
was driving
becoming a
home.
real estate agent
Told
in the
me,
greater
like
Philly
our kids
area,
in the
I
car
have
and
a
stuff.
special
It was
offer
like
for
shit show
you.
getting home.
Our
So
team did
Was that yesterday?
$165 million of
her
volume in
client, so
2021.
apparently there was
Yeah, I
a
heard
dip
The number
in
one
the
Remax
driveway,
team in
and the client's
Pennsylvania
car
and
got
a
stuck,
top
and she like
1%
floored it
team
in
nationally.
reverse and ripped her
Our
whole
agents
front lip
love us
off.
because we offer them a successful
I was like,
career,
what?
a great life,
So what did
and
you
an
do? Her
unbeatable
husband
culture.
had to come like
Agents
tie
who've
the
been with us
bumper
for
up.
at
Oh
least
my
a year
god! I was like,
average
only you,
30 plus
Maddie.
sales. Even our brand new agents average 17 to 24 sales a year. We offer proven systems and expert training. We help you set more appointments and sell more houses. Now here's the offer. If you don't have a real estate license yet, we offer real estate scholarships so you can get one for free. Check it out. 1 minute. StateScholarshipProgram.com or visit the Tom Toole Sales Group at Remax Mainline at TomToole.com. That's TomToolewithAE.com. Get more out of your real estate career, and remember the real estate golden rule. You always get more when you work with Tom Toole.
You shouldn't have to deal with all the red tape when getting your mortgage from a big or online bank. At Mortgage America, we have access to big bank money, but with the personalized and detailed service of a local bank. We are here in your community and ready to serve with fast settlements,
the
low
Lancaster
down
pool
payment
party or whatever.
options, and first-time home
Oh, it was
buyer
good.
programs.
How's the wet weather? It's hot
Free,
here, right?
No
Yeah,
costs or
it's very
commitments.
hot.
For more information, visit
yes,
our
that was
website
like
at
Sunday.
mymortgageamerica.com
That's
or
like the
give
best
us
day
a
to do
call
something.
at 610
Yeah. Sunday, I'm like, oh,
It was like
it's like
87 degrees. It was really warm.
Yeah.
Have you considered
It was like
a career in
77
real
down the
estate?
shore. It's actually
You
pretty
have
warm down there.
control over your
Yeah, my
Do you have a license or not?
in-laws were
Call
down
us
market.
today
They said it was
610
just
692
just people were, like,
6976
flooding
or
the shore.
visit TomToole.com.
Problem.
Join our team, the Tom
We're
Toole
just
Sales
saying
Group
that's
at
standard.
Remax Line.
All right. We are back on Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM. I'm Tom Toole. She's Sarah Timon. He's Keith Lombardi, and we all work at the Tom Toole Sales Group at Remax Mainline, the #1 Remax team in Pennsylvania since 2018. And we're here to talk about our good friend, killer agent, client advocate, Keith Lombardi. If you want to follow Keith, you can follow him on Instagram. Excuse me. It's at KLomb Real Estate. So KLOMB Real Estate on Instagram. You can get in touch with them there. Keith, tell us a little bit more. I mean, obviously you've been in on the show. Great contributions. We got to have Keith back on. This was good. It was very helpful. So how'd you get into real estate in the first place? Give us a little background. I know you've been doing this for a while. Fill us in on who Keith Lombardi is locally for the people that need help in the marketplace.
I'd probably be very surprised. I started off in the automotive sector. I was working on cars since I was a teenager. My best friend's dad growing up was a certified Toyota mechanic and kind of taught me the basics, did Votech in high school, went to trade school, pretty much knew coming out that that was what I wanted to do. Like a lot of things, when you actually experience what it's like in the real world, it was very different. Enjoyed it, but very hard to make a living, especially from a flat rate perspective in a dealership setting. So, but did that, worked for a different shop, and then actually wound up working my way up to being a service advisor and then manager of a retail automotive shop out in Westchester, which is really what opened up Chester County. Really liked what I did. That was how I first got my experience dealing with customers, which I think was a great way to learn, because obviously no one's happy when your car's broken down. So I got to deal with it coming in, being upset right off Jump Street. But worked into the wholesale end of it, and really just enjoyed learning the sales side of the business. Got married, started having kids. One kid in daycare, incredibly expensive. Kid number 2 coming, even more expensive. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Everything that I'm making is going to go right out the door, and then I'm missing all the milestones, the first steps, the first words. So my wife, who was working in healthcare at the time, decided, all right, you make the better money, you have the benefits, I'll stay home. We'll try and find something I can do part-time. And my wife's aunt at the time was actually an agent with Keller Williams, who still held her license on a referral basis in Connecticut.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she was like, you know what? You have a pretty engaging personality. Have you ever thought about selling real estate? I said, no. I said, I don't know anything about real estate. What, are you crazy? And she was like,
Sarah, did you know anything about real estate when you got?
Yeah,
Neither did I. So there we go. That's the 3 of us.
So she said, at least if you do it part-time, it's supplemental income until you find something else. So I did it. I was with Keller Williams for about a year and realized very quickly, hey, I'm pretty good at this. Maybe we should just give it, a good effort. We'll dive in, head first and see what happens. And that was 6 years ago, so luckily things have worked out. It wasn't without a lot of trials and tribulations, a lot to learn. There always is, but it's been really cool. I've got to meet a lot of cool people, a lot of really great clients who actually have become friends. So it's been an awesome ride so far.
So was it like 6 months of you doing it part-time and then you took the leap into full-time, or how long was your transition period?
So I started off, and like a lot of agents do, I started doing a lot of investment stuff, because there's always an investor that wants to talk to a new agent and run them around, and you don't realize it very first, and it's a lot of time wasting. But just happened to meet a couple of really cool people who were doing business pretty regularly, and was able to do, a couple of deals pretty quickly. And I was like, you know what? I mean, I did okay for my first year in business. Let's kind of see what happens here. I was still actively looking and interviewing for full-time positions. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to stop. I want to give this a good run and see what happens. I figured I would give it at least, a year or 2 full-time, see what happens. And like I said, luckily, here we are. It wasn't without a few changes. Eventually everything is a stepping stone in business, and I learned a lot along the way. I've been with a few different companies until I ended up with Tom's team. Met Tom a few years ago, actually, and he stayed in contact with me for probably the better side of 3 years, until eventually he got me over.
We're
here.
persistent.
Very.
Follow-up, right? I mean,
exactly.
Yeah, I was trying to think of the term that you used earlier.
Politely persistent.
Yeah,
Yep.
politely persistent.
We don't want to be a jerk.
No.
So that's very cool. Well, we're grateful to have you, Keith. So one of the things that always amazes me is I think that you get to a point in your career where you've kind of actually you're going to stick, because we know there's a high failure rate in this business. So what are some of the skills you developed, or the things that you do personally that's kept you in the business past the valley of death, right? We know that 87% of agents are out of the business in 5 years. You're past that. You're selling houses. I mean, you've been a killer clip since we got to start working together, and we're just getting started, which is the most exciting thing. What do you do that has kept you consistent in your business? Because that's the biggest challenge for real estate agents, is what I found, at least.
I mean, some would say it's probably a fault. I mean, I take what I do very seriously, very personally. I love just talking to people, genuinely just being helpful outside of the realm of real estate. I've had people who have come to me with hey, you were a car guy, I have questions, or hey, what do you think about this? I've had dinner with clients who have become good friends. The kids play, and we do play dates and stuff like that. But I mean, it was the best part was that once I finally realized the consistency of how to reach out to people and how frequently to do it, and then I started to see the business come back organically,
Mm-hmm.
that's when I was like, all right, this is when it's getting really fun, and that's a natural motivator for me. You know, being my own boss has been pretty cool. My kids have been like, oh, you know, I want to work for daddy when I grow up. So that's been pretty cool as well.
That's awesome.
I mean, I think it's, you know, realizing that it is your business. Yes, we work for someone else, but it is your business, and you're only going to get out of it what you put into it. And it's allowed, you know, over COVID, which obviously was a terrible time for everyone. Being in real estate allowed me to have enough money that we were able to redo our kitchen. You know, so, and it's not everyone can say that. You know, and I don't know. It's just, you get to a point where you realize like you finally found what you were meant to be doing, which is what I feel like, you know, after probably year 3 is when I really started to, my business quadrupled, and I was really being consistent and doing, you know, a lot of deals, helping people. People were calling me. It wasn't always just actively prospecting. That was when I realized, all right, like something's going here. And then I also think always being humble enough to realize that there's more that you can learn. If you get to a point where you think you've learned enough, you've already failed. Always realizing that there's always more to learn. You can always better yourself, whether it be professionally or personally. So never being afraid to ask for help. There's a million people out there that have probably run into situations you haven't. So, you know, don't be afraid to ask for help. Just, you know, be a genuinely good person.
I mean, I believe asking for help is a skill, because I think some people, they think they know it all, and then they just do whatever, and then that's when you get in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So I think that's really smart on your part. And you know, when I hear you talk about it, like there's a passion behind this here, and I believe you got to be passionate about whatever you're doing in order to, you know, you don't have to love it every day, but you got to feel like there's a purpose behind it, which is awesome. So, I mean, you've had some incredible success, and it's been super consistent. What advice do you have for people that are maybe trying to break through, like they're in maybe year 1 or year 2, and they don't know if it's going to work out or not? Because I think I don't know about you guys. I mean, I was questioning a lot my first couple years in the business, and it's like, is this for me? Is this going to stick? Like, so what advice do you have for people that are trying to get some consistency in their business, break through, or just be consistent on like a month-over-month basis?
I would say, first off, do as many open houses as you possibly can do, because that was where I got probably 65% of my first business, and it's an opportunity to learn how to speak to people. Scripting is huge. I would be the first person to tell you, if you spoke to me a year and a half ago, I would tell you that scripting is nonsense. It doesn't work. I won't ever do it. And I learned very quickly it is absolutely mandatory, because if you are not fluent in what you're saying and being able to give that measure of confidence in the way you say things, especially you have someone who has a $700,000 house, you know, they want someone who they can feel confident that is going to do the best job for them. And it actually doesn't even matter price wise. So if you can't give that impression within the first few minutes of meeting someone, they've already made their decision. So it's the way you say things and the things that you say and how you present yourself as a person. So I think that that's very important. Definitely read real estate books. You know, there's a lot of things to learn. It never hurts to kind of hear people's different perspectives. Listen to a podcast if you're, instead of just listening to the radio and the same 4 songs that they play over and over again, and just try and expand your mind a little bit. Talk to senior agents. Ask them what worked for them when they were younger. Just take it all in. Just be a sponge. But yeah, definitely open houses was huge. When I was doing at least 2 a month, and that's how I got a lot of my first business and got much more comfortable in talking to customers, or what eventually became clients. So.
Well, it sounds like you got like some reps in talking to them. And so what was the breakthrough in scripting? You said you didn't believe in scripting 18 months. I want to hear this one, because I'm obviously like very pro scripting. So I'd love to hear that from you.
I just always was convinced that if you didn't know what to say, you probably shouldn't be in this industry. And I guess it was because I was always someone who was comfortable speaking with people.
Sure.
And was never afraid to kind of just tell it how it is. But then I had those moments where I was like, you know what, had I just had a predetermined response ready to go, that whole conversation probably would have went differently. And really it's the consistency. So like I was never someone who was really good with following with a CRM. So having the consistent, you know, reach out to people with those scripting and hearing how the conversation progressed, even over such a short term, when I was like, you know what, this scripting thing's actually working. It wasn't until I came over to your team, honestly. Like when I was with
That's awesome.
my last brokerage, I swore off scripting ever since. So it was definitely a big eye opener for me.
Well, that is very kind words, my friend. We are grateful to have you on. You want to follow Keith? It's at KLomb Real Estate, KLOMB Real Estate. You can follow Sarah. She's at Ty Time on Instagram. You can follow me at TomToole3RD. We're here every week. If you got some value out of the show, you like what you heard, hit the subscribe button on the channel. Make sure to click on the bell for notifications. And you can schedule a call with our team with the link in the comments. That's it for this week's episode of Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM. That was awesome, Keith. Good job, man.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
This is nice and air conditioned here. That helps.
Yeah. This is quite the setup.